Thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here. For Can't Change the Past, Mike Brown Jr., 10 Years Gone. We're going to have a moment of silence in honor of Michael Brown Jr.'s life and legacy. Um, the video that will accompany the moment of silence is 4 minutes and 30 seconds long, which represents the 4 hours and 30 minutes that Mike Brown's body laid in front of his community, his family, and his friends, in front of the buildings that he grew up in Canfield Green. The video is silent. It was recorded in 2015. I had to go back to go forward. And I wrote this poem, Silent Parade, for Cahokia, Martha Gruen, and W.E.B. Du Bois. 1050 to 1350, common era, people lived across from St. Louis. Many years later, the memorial mounds are still there. People disappeared. Mississippi, oh, Mississippi, remain. In 1917, there was the silent parade. Fight for jobs in East St. Louis. Became murderer. $400,000 of property destroyed. 6,000 African Americans displaced. 48 people killed, white and black, black. New Yorkers marched down Fifth Avenue in white. Shh. When Michael Meredith, my friend and colleague from Organizing from Action, asked me to come to his hometown of St. Louis to conduct a series of interviews with community members about what happened in Ferguson, please start the PowerPoint. The city of St. Louis and within the state of Missouri after Mike Brown Jr.'s death on August 9th, 2014. I could not have predicted the physical and emotional journey and learning experience that I would be taking on once I accepted the opportunity. As a child, I grew up in the working class neighborhood of Bushwick in Brooklyn, New York. My early years of life were guided by my great-grandmother, Sally Sanders, step-grandfather, Delroy Scott, and grandmother, Nancy. When my great-grandmother arrived with my grandmother in New York City in December of 1941, the goal was to seek a better life for themselves and for the future. My maternal family is from South Carolina, a small town near Camden. And like so many others during the Great Migration, one of the reasons my family went to New York City was to get away from the terrorizing violence that was all too common in the South after the Civil War during the period known as Jim Crow. In my mid-20s, my father gave me a copy of Evidence of Things Not Seen by James Baldwin. In reading this book, it was the first time that I began to fully understand the horrific conditions that my family had lived under after the end of slavery here in the United States. In the preface of Baldwin's book, he shares this quote: "Sometimes I think one child in Atlanta said to me that I'll be coming home from baseball or football practice and somebody's car will come behind me and I'll be thrown into the trunk of the car and it'll be dark and he'll drive the car away and I'll never be found again, never be found again." What horror is that horror is far more vivid than the fear of death. The Ku Klux Klan, in the act of terrorizing African American, Catholic, and Jewish communities around the United States after the Civil War, helped instill a fear of disappearing and being lost forever in children and adults. The concepts of missing, loss, and lack of evidence to prove innocence has created a fear that one could be removed from society to a point where one could question whether or not that person lived. Slide, please. While the situation surrounding a serial killer in Atlanta in the 1980s, preying on children, male and female, is quite different than the death of Mike Brown Jr. on the surface, actually, there are many similarities in the two scenarios. We're talking about the loss of Black bodies, Black lives, and with that death, the loss of hopes and dreams, the loss of a future unknown and not lived. Furthermore, it is a life lived in fear, fear of your neighbor, fear of law enforcement, fear of the institutions in society that perpetuate the idea that they are here to help you, but in actuality do everything they can to continue the mental and physical oppression that remains part of the ongoing daily struggle of being African American or a person of color in the United States of America. The interviews that you will read in the book are vast and represent a wide range of opinions. There are community leaders, organizers, politicians, law enforcement professionals, faith-based leaders, artists, and activists in this book. There are people from St. Louis, from Ferguson, from Missouri, and from other places. They are men, women, Black and white. Most importantly, they are the people who, when I asked them to speak with me on the record to document the incidents before and after Mike Brown's death, who felt that this is an important conversation to have. It is important not only for the St. Louis and Ferguson communities, but it's important for all communities to talk about what happened in Ferguson on August 9th, 2014, and to talk about why African American and people of color's children grow up in fear generation after generation, and what we can do in the future to get justice, peace, and accountability for all. Slide. The idea of the American dream is presented to many Americans at a young age. The two biggest experiences I had with this notion as a child was in reading A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry and Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. In both of these plays, I saw myself, my family, and my community. Baldwin writes, "To lie to a child is to betray a child. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Right now, we all have to hold on." As one interviewee says in her interview, "I have no solutions, but we need to get next to each other. It is only through sitting and listening to each other that any progress can be made." And I hope that this book of interviews is part of the catalyst to create the changes that we need to see in the world regarding law enforcement, racism, and the community to make a permanent change in the United States that's felt and seen all over the world, like the events after Mike Brown's death were. July 12th, 2015, Phoenix, Arizona. Revised October 5th, 2015, Brooklyn, New York. Special thanks. I want to thank everyone who helped me complete this book. When I started out, the goal was to raise enough money to go to Ferguson, Missouri to conduct some interviews and write a few thousand words about the experience. However, because of their generosity and support, I was able to go to Ferguson, collect these interviews, have them transcribed, and edited them down in preparation for this book. To the numerous friends and supporters who contributed to my GoFundMe page, thank you. To the friends who gave me shelter as I worked day in and out to make the book available as fast as possible, thank you. To my friends who bought me a meal or cooked me a meal and provided substance during the project, thank you. If at any point throughout my entire life you did any or all of these things mentioned above, thank you. Because of you, the Ferguson Interview Project became a reality, and you're holding this book right now in your hands. I have to give special thanks to my parents and my extended family. Thank you for all the support that you've provided over these years. I, of course, would not be me without you. I would be remiss to not mention that in the time between when I began transcribing and editing to when I completed this book, that many things changed in the United States of America. The United States women's national soccer team won the 2015 World Cup tournament, and we're the first women's sports team to be honored with a ticker tape parade in New York City. The Supreme Court of the United States issued several important rulings housing rights were protected, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, was upheld, and marriage equality became the law of the land, which led to many celebrations from the LGBTQ community and our allies. In addition, 9 people were horrifically killed at the Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina on June 17th, 2015. As a result of that tragedy, there has been an enormous outcry for the removing of the Confederate flag from the South Carolina state capitol and other public lands around the United States of America, and building on the effect that Mike Brown's death had in the inciting of the Black Lives Matter movement, a new determination to address racism and white privilege in all of its various forms in the United States of America came to the forefront in the public and private conversations many Americans have been having on the subject. I began to wonder as I was finishing editing this book, how those incidents would have changed this book and these conversations. The interviews are no less relevant. In fact, I think they are all the more important because they're talking about the very issues the Mother Emanuel 9 lost their lives for, and that Mike Brown Jr. lost his life for, and that Emmett Till lost his life for, and that Medgar Evers lost his life for, and that Viola Luzo lost her life for, and that those 4 little Black girls in a church in Birmingham, Alabama, lost their lives for, and that Matthew Shepard lost his life for. The list goes on and on. There are too many names to list, and I have to thank all of those people too. The fight for civil rights for all Americans continues, and I hope that this book helps us move forward so that all Americans have equality and full protections under the law, and that African Americans and people of color can live lives that are free from the constant harassment at the hands of unconstitutional law enforcement practices in the United States. This book is dedicated to all the Americans who have given their lives in the fight for civil rights so that we could be free. We must forgive, but we can never forget. July 14th, 2015, Phoenix, Arizona. Revised October 7th, 2015, Washington, D.C. Slide, please. These images I took in Ferguson when I was there in May of 2015. Slide. Some of these images are current events that I took off social media. Slide, please. Slide, please. Thank you. It is my honor to introduce Quincy Troupe. Quincy Troupe is an award-winning poet, biographer, and author of 20 books, including 12 volumes of poetry and 3 children's books. Among Troupe's best-selling works are Miles, the autobiography of Miles Davis and his memoir, Miles and Me, soon to become a major motion picture. His writings have been translated into over 30 languages. His most recent book of poetry is Duende Poems, 1966. Now, please join me in welcoming Quincy Troupe.
Quincy, I think you're muted. I just sent you a prompt to unmute so we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm sitting here in Harlem in New York City, where I live with my wife, Margaret, who is from Mississippi. And we've been together for 40 some years and over 40 years. And so I feel privileged to be on this program because having grown up in St. Louis, Missouri, and moved from there and changed, St. Louis changed me. And because when I grew up, I was a very violent young guy growing up in St. Louis, just to survive in a way. And but it's, it still changed me. I want to read this poem for, when I was asked to do this, I wrote a poem for Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin. It's called A Dirge for Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin. And it's in my book, Duende, Poems 1966-Now, and published by Seven Stories Press, and it's about 600 pages, hardback and paperback. Okay. A Dirge for Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin. Where does life force of breath go after flesh falls away from bone? Does it rest in the wound of memory, raise up its spirit inside ghost voices, recognized once as bodies carrying names of Michael, Tamir, Trayvon? So many other young Black boys and girls with bright eyes looking into a future of dreams before being cut down by spitting leads of bullets fired into their spirits, carrying their names in Ferguson, St. Louis, Cleveland, Chicago, Florida. Where do their spirits go after breath leaves them? Suddenly, beyond hearing love from their mothers and fathers' voices, brothers and sisters too, quaking grief, close friends. Do they hear music now where they are in the ground? A trumpet lick sweet as a dead kiss, sad kiss, wailing over piano keys, tickling lyrical disbelief, rain falling on days when melodic drum beats echo footsteps soft as memory. When a trumpet voice hauntingly pierces flights of morning's gloomy light, bird wings slicing through sadness of the day. Bass strings echoing echoes beneath dark, aching words of a poet's voice, raising up names of so many young Black men robbed of future by spitting bullets stamped with their names, spitting bullets, shrieking, stamped with their names like hornets stamped with their names. Where will all this death take us beyond tears, weeping music, poetry, mourning words of a St. Louis woman, a St. Louis woman? How long will memory remember this fear? These last names, these lost names, stamped on faces of paper posters, nailed to trees, walls, and saw room, splattered with blood, inside mourning houses for years, carrying memories of young Black faces with sweet smiles, eyes bright as suns, staring into a future once possible with dreams, lost now in an instant after death, fired from demons walking still amongst us now into their brains. How long will we keep these spirits warm with love inside our hearts before amnesia's modern embrace obliterates time entombing so many celebrated as martyrs now? Yes, Black lives do matter, have always mattered, hearing now each and every day, but living every second, minute, every hour. Yet Black lives do matter, alive here now, have always mattered here, alive now, breathing, magical, beautiful, alive, living does matter for those who know meaning lives here when lungs take in breath, makes us whole again. Creative does matter when air is sweet beneath the sun, wondrous, magical as music, poetry. Yes, Black lives do matter, have always mattered. Every day, light rises with the sun. When we welcome the moon coming in night, when the shadows come out, wavering like wind breath, singing through leaves of trees, swelling with symphonies, voices beautiful, powerful as choruses of blues, tonguing, insinuation, echoing with puns, humor drawn from Black lives. Inside song, yes, Black lives do matter. Each day the sun blooms, a trumpet voice of Miles Davis within the cold skin of night, where the moon shines in the eyes and mouth of a Black child smiling every moment as the sun and moon rising, breathing inside lungs, exhaling, inhaling, like the miracle that is life, rising, falling like pitches of music, swelling with breath, with beauty, Black lives, people breaking in the here and now, every second, breathing in the here and now, every day. Yes, Black lives do matter. Bring all living in the air, living in the trumpet's voice will always matter. Singing in the air will always matter. Beautiful as we are will always matter. Breathing in this life will always matter. Yes, always, always, always. Black lives will always matter. Always matter.
Wow, yes. Black lives will always matter. That is truly poetry for your people.
Thank you. Well, I wrote that poem after I was asked to do this program, and after Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and Trayvon Martin died, because I've been shot. Even though I've been a college, I'm a retired college professor, but I've been shot, stabbed twice, so I know what it is to be in a violent situation. And I was violent growing up. I'm not going to put it on everybody else. I was as violent as anybody. It's growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, because I wasn't going to take no stupid stuff off somebody. You know what I mean? Just because they didn't like the clothes I had on, or they wanted to go with the woman I was going with. You know what I mean? That's, for me, that's just stupid, And so I understand where violence comes from. I lost so many friends. I have lost so many, many friends, that are gone. They are gone. I mean, gone violently. I'm not talking about the people who died in their sleep, in their bed. I'm talking about people who were shot to death, and so this subject was was very important to me. It still is important.
That's so moving. And thank you for sharing your story and creating this space and providing this pathos for us.
No, my pleasure. My honor. I feel honored to be involved in this. I feel honored to be involved in this. And this book, Duende, is a big book. I call it the brick. When people ask me about it, I said 600 pages hardback and paperback, and I call it the brick. I said, you don't want me to hit you with it, man, because it'll hurt. It's not a little paperback. So, and my wife took this photograph of me, trying to look hip, see, you know.
Quincy, you're the best wife. Margaret's the best.
Oh, she is the best. I mean, she is a lovely, lovely woman. We've been together for almost 50 years, 50 years? 50 years almost. And she told me when I first met her, don't get serious about me. I only go with somebody for 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months. So now when she's walking around the house, I hit her. I said, "You still here? Man, I thought you was gonna be gone." But she's from Mississippi, and so we enjoy each other. We travel a lot together. She's a fantastic cook and just a wonderful companion in person. Provided a great house for me, a home for me, and a son who's 6'6", who is here now, someplace in the back. He came with his little baby son. He lives in Portland.
Yeah, he's a basketball player, right?
Yeah, but he wasn't good as me. That's what I tell him all the time. He was big, taller than me, but I told him one day. He said, "Man, I'm going, Dad." I said, Porter, we were state champions. I was on championship teams. I used to average 30 points a game. What you average, 15? And so, it's just that back and forth of men who used to play and who was better. It's all in fun. It's just all in fun. I still think he couldn't. I still think if I was the same age, I'd have killed him. I still think that. I really do. He said, "You still think you could have scored, done me?" And I said, "Every day, man, every day." I mean, because I was a champion. I played on championship teams. I didn't never think I was going to lose. Never. Once I went on the floor, I told a guy one time, this was in St. Louis. It was a white guy. He came up, he's guarding me. And I said to him, "You gonna guard me?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Is your girlfriend here?" He said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Is your girlfriend here?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You don't want to guard me because she'll be with me afterwards." You dig? That's how bad I'm gonna make you look. And afterwards, I sent him to the bench. He was weeping. I went over to him and hugged him afterwards. I said, "It's all in the game, man. That's what it is, man. It's not, I don't hate you or nothing, but it's all about, it's about the game. It's not about you. It's about me out here to win. I'm out here to win. And
And when you're from St. Louis,
yeah,
where it's what 47th in the country in upward mobility.
yeah, oh yeah. I had a great family, and the troops, you didn't want to mess with us in St. Louis. You did not want to mess with the troops in St. Louis. It's true. Especially my generation, everybody else has kind of changed. But you did not want to, you didn't want to do that. Because if you did, troops would come from all over St. Louis on you. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was. That's what it was.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Quincy.
My pleasure.
It's I'm gonna introduce Alexis Rivierre. Alexis Rivierre is a multidisciplinary storyteller, educator, and exhibitions coordinator whose work explores Black lived experiences through diverse media, including photography, textiles, poetry, and performance. Her innovative art practice, which challenges conventional narratives with a fractured storytelling approach, has been featured in venues such as STNDRD and Museum Blue. Rivierre holds an MFA in studio art from Wichita State University and a BFA from Missouri State University. Rivierre is an adjunct professor at Suffolk County Community College and has served as an exhibitions coordinator for Counterpublic and Kranzberg Arts Foundation, partnering with these organizations to support marginalized communities through transformative exhibitions and educational programs. Warm welcome to Alexis Rivierre.
Righty. I hope you can hear me. I'd like to thank the Brooklyn Rail and Ama Birch for the opportunity to share with you all this afternoon. I am incredibly grateful for the chance to honor Michael Brown Jr.'s memory and to uplift the St. Louis and Ferguson communities and the many communities represented on this Zoom. You can start my presentation. Okay, so my name is Alexis Rivierre, and I am an interdisciplinary storyteller. Like Mike, I am a St. Louis native. I am also a former Normandy High School Viking, and I am one who negotiates living in the United States while inhabiting a body that is racially codified as Black. As I read today, you'll see images featuring one of my masked characters named On Being, as they are in the impromptu performances entitled hashtag I am the flag and hashtag stand, works that were catalyzed by the death of Michael Brown Jr. and the countless other Black and brown bodies and people who have tragically lost their lives to police violence. Next slide. On Being, here I am, sitting in a mask constructed from an American flag with a singular zipper sewn down the middle, wearing a Black hoodie, hands intently bracing each other with fingers interlocked. There I am, self-restrained, yet internally frustrated by witnessing the repetitive images of Black and brown bodies circulating the media as they fatally fall as a result of police brutality. I am before you, sitting as an emblem of power reclaimed, power sustained, a conversation on being, on existence. Next slide. Power at the intersection. Before the performance hashtag I am the flag appears on screen, it is important to understand that this work exists amidst several intersecting histories within its geographical context, as it is inserted within the narratives of enslavement, segregation practices, and displacement, in addition to mirroring cyclical Black death. The performance took place within the green space between St. Louis Arch and the old courthouse in St. Louis, Missouri. As well, you'll see it's also taking place in Wichita State University's campus in Wichita, Kansas, making connections between the events of fatal police shootings in both cities, as in the case of John Paul Quintero in Wichita and Michael Brown Jr. in Ferguson, which is a suburb in Greater St. Louis metropolitan. Famously nicknamed the Gateway to the West, the St. Louis Arch is a 630-foot iconic monument commemorating Thomas Jefferson and the St. Louis role in westward expansion. The old courthouse sits directly opposite of the arch. These sites happen to be 22 minutes away from the place of Michael Brown Jr.'s death in Canefield Green in Ferguson. To erect the arch, Mill Creek Valley, a thriving African-American community, was demolished and displaced. In the image, the yellow rectangular area indicates where the National Park and the Gateway Arch are today, and where Mill Creek Valley, one of St. Louis's oldest neighborhoods, once stood. The arrow on the far left points to the old courthouse, and each red arrow indicates performative zones that I have inhabited within the work. Next slide. The old courthouse is often recognized as the site where Dred Scott and his wife Harriet, who were slaves, filed for their freedom in the case Dred Scott versus Sanford. Ultimately, the Supreme Court denied their freedom, declaring that no Negroes were entitled to freedom. This case is regarded as one of the catalysts to the Civil War, which ultimately established freedom for the enslaved across the US. It mustn't be overlooked that the east steps of the courthouse depicted in this image, which I faced while I knelt in performance, is a site where over 500 slaves were sold during antebellum St. Louis. Next slide. On the screen, there is a depiction on the left of a slave auction on the courthouse's east steps, and on the right, me as On Being, activating those steps in protest performance. Next slide. Hashtag I am the flag. Hashtag I am the flag. It has been said that taking a knee as an act of protest to police brutality in the United States is disrespectful to this country, to those who serve, and to the flag. To those sentiments, I say, I am the flag. You are the flag. Michael Brown Jr. was also the flag. I hereby reiterate the unanimous declaration of those who went before as they established this nation. The following truths are indeed self-evident, that all men are created equal, that their creator endows them with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, I'm sure that when Michael Brown was not who the founding fathers were dreaming of when they penned the Declaration of Independence in 1776, but their proclamation should hold true for you. It should hold true for me, and it should have held true for Mike. Life was his right, liberty was his right. The ability to start college 1 week after August 9th in 2014 and pursue his happiness was Michael Brown Jr.'s right. Next slide. Hashtag stand. To echo the title of this convening, we cannot change the past, but we can remember. We can allow Michael Brown Jr.'s memory to radically revolutionize our imaginations amidst the injustices still occurring today, so that we can collectively and individually reform the socio-political landscape that perpetuates such acts of violence. We must hashtag stand for Mike. We must hashtag stand for change. Speaking of reformation, as I draw to a close today, I will leave you with an excerpt from abolitionist Frederick Douglass, shared during his West India Emancipation speech, delivered at Canandaigua, New York, August 3rd, 1857. Now, I want to emphasize that this speech was given 157 years before and 6 days shy of the exact date of the killing of Michael Brown Jr. and the civil unrest that followed. The excerpt states, "Let me give you a word of the philosophy of reform. The whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. It must do this or it does nothing. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one or it may be a physical one, and it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power conceives nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or with both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those who they oppress. Men may not get all they pay for in this world, but they must certainly pay for all they get. If we ever get free from the oppressions and wrongs heaped upon us, we must pay for their removal. We must do this by labor, by suffering, by sacrifice, and if need be, by our lives and the lives of others." End quote. Next slide. So I say to you, remember, without struggle and sacrifice, there is no progress. May we be powerful and make the necessary changes for progress. And may you continue to rest in power, Michael Brown Jr. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you. That was so, wow. So Mike Brown has given so much to so many people.
Absolutely. And his legacy will perpetuate through eternity. Yeah, I am indebted. My practice is indebted to Mike Brown. His work has changed the way I view being an artist and what I should be speaking for in the world. And so, yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to Michael Brown Jr.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation.
Ama, you are muted. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about the St. Louis art and Alexis's presentation. Our next presenter, our next poet is Nicole Sealey. Nicole Sealey was born in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, and raised in Apopka, Florida. She is the author of The Ferguson Report and Erasure, winner of the 2024 OCM Bocas Prize for Poetry, and an excerpt from which was awarded the Forward Prize for Best Single Poem. She is also the author of Ordinary Beast and The Animal After Whom Other Animals Are Named, and co-edited the anthology Dear Yusuf, Essays, Letters, and Poems for and about one Mr. Komunyakaa. Her honors include both the Arts and Hodder Fellowships from Princeton University and the Coleman Center Fellowship from the New York Public Library, among others. She teaches in the MFA Writers Workshop in Paris program at New York University. Warm welcome for Nicole Sealey.
Thank you so much, Ama, for the introduction. Thank you to the Brooklyn Rail for having me. Ama, again, for asking me to come out and participate, and to Quincy, whose work I've been living with for decades, and Alexis, amazing. Ama, also amazing. Thank you all for doing this very necessary program. I appreciate it. So I'm going to read a few things, the first of which are excerpts from the Ferguson Report and Erasure. And if you don't know what an erasure is, it's a poetic form in which sections of a document is erased to create a brand new creative work. So I did this with the Ferguson Report, and the Ferguson Report details the bias, policing, and court practices, as you all know, in Ferguson, Missouri. It was published by the DOJ. So I'll start with a few sections from that, and then I'll move on to older work from Ordinary Beast, if that's okay. So this is from section 1, pages 1 to 12 from the report. Horses, hundreds, neighing, part reflex, part reason, part particular urge. At gunpoint among them you are. Less likely to live into the wild go the captive born. Home in the high grass, a barking dog chokes itself against the pull of a tight leash, its neck extending farther than cries for help. A kind of headlight echoing, increasing in reach. The forecast read, the city read, diminishing to the proportion of whoever said death comes in threes is an optimist. Pages 13 to 21. Then the birds began to fly, low and patternless, as if they were each two hands joined, just pretending at birds. The soft music from passing cars shouting down the soft music of their dying. Stop, hands where I can see. A boy pretends to pray. His mark makes of her hands a bird and flies away. Stop, or I'll shoot, he kids. Then makes of his hands a gun, fires away. Pages 22 to 34. In the bushes, next to the lot across the street, a rustling like back talk, a deer. The animal out of nowhere flees, seconds too late. A design oversight assigned to that particular beast. On the police radio, a song, a threat, a slip of tongue in the air. moist as an eye. Approached, the deer stiffens, a telltale sign the conditions under which it ran were breaking the skin. Worse, training the mind. Who among us is stunned by how fast rain pours from the sky? Stunned by how the sky, clear at first, self-corrects, as if to say, I mean this, not that, not this. Pages 35 to 39. Use of force, force of habit, of nature, force feed, force down, force his hand, force in line, full force, by force, show of force, brute force, blunt force to be reckoned with, force a smile as law enforcement turns out in force to force, open your door. Pages 40 to 49. With the living, I am familiar. A woman stretches the truth to disappear it, throws her voice to animate it, as when I imagine the word was made flesh. I've been trying to scrape up what I remember. 1,100 stems long, headless. 2, a few bad apples. 3, reports of a stolen pickup. You put down one color, Bearden thought, and it calls for an answer. What's an answer to Black, I wonder? Pages 50 to 64. As for men lying face down in the street, knees on their necks, their hands behind their backs, laboring like babies on their bellies trying to crawl. Then stiff as a dime down after a toss in the air, tails, sea heads, heads, execution on the basis of fact, including the fact, if true, with the caption, pass out, motherfucker. An idea came to me this morning like an honest mistake. It's sundown here. The day, almost entirely extinguished, closes its casket's crown after bearing gifts as pointed as its teeth. Pages 65 to 77. They say stand in line, so we stand in line. As the line advances, they say stand still. Around us, everything going like cars or clouds. Us, the blur cars pass. The blue clouds damn. They say wait, so we wait. As if for some fragrant flower that unfurls one night a year. They say shh. So like trees, we mouth cross sounds of flags, beaten to shreds by wind. Our heads twitch, birds watching for what might be stalking. Right before they deploy canines to bite, there's a pause between wails in which you hear your shut eyes dilate. Listen. I'm gonna read a few poems from Ordinary Beasts. The first is called Hysterical Strength. Hysterical Strength. When I hear news of a hitchhiker struck by lightning, yet living, or a child lifting a 2-ton sedan to free his father pinned underneath, or a camper fighting off a grizzly with her bare hands until someone, a hunter perhaps, can shoot it dead, my thoughts turn to Black people, the hysterical strength we must possess to survive our very existence, which I fear many believe is and treat as itself a freak occurrence. This next poem is based on a work of art by this dude called Thomas Hirshhorn. And what it is a group of mannequins wrapped, and it's called Candelabra with Heads. And it's a group of mannequins wrapped in brown duct tape and lifted up on a wooden structure. So I saw this and was immediately struck by it and wrote this poem. And the form of this poem is, the last half of the poem is the reverse of the first half, and then it ends with a kind of thesis statement. This is called, after the work, Candelabra with Heads. Had I not brought with me my mind as it has been made, this thing, this brood of mannequins cocooned and mounted on a wooden scaffold, might be 8 infants swaddled and sleeping, might be 8 fleshy fingers on one hand, might be a family tree with 8 pictured frames. Such treaties occur in the brain. Can you see them hanging? Their shadow is a crowd stripping the tree of souvenirs. Skin shrinks and splits. The bodies weep fat the color of yolk. Can you smell them burning? Their perfume climbing as wisteria would a trellis. As wisteria would a trellis burning, their perfume climbing fat the color of yolk. Can you smell them? Skin shrinks and splits. The bodies weep. Is a crowd stripping the tree of souvenirs. Can you see them hanging? Their shadow frames. Such treaties occur in the brain. Might be a family tree with 8 pictured. Might be 8 fleshy fingers on one hand. Might be 8 infants swaddled and sleeping and mounted on a wooden scaffold. This brood of mannequins cocooned as it has been made. This thing, had I not brought with me my mind, who can see this and not see lynchings? And then I'll end with this poem. And this poem is after the one that I just read. At the advice of poets who I admire, they had advised me to extract that last line, that last question, who can see this and not see lynchings? And so I did so in my chapbook, which is a kind of short form version of a full-length collection. But then I started putting together my full-length collection, and I found that that question at the poem's end was necessary because I needed the reader to see what I, a Black woman, saw. And so this next poem is called In Defense of Candelabra with Heads, and it speaks to the urgency that I felt to return that question to the poem's end. This is called, again, In Defense of Candelabra with Heads. And I want to thank you all for listening, and thank the readers for reading and the organizers for organizing. Thank you. In Defense of Candelabra with Heads. If you've read the candelabra with heads that appears in this collection and the one in the animal, thank you. The original, the one included here, is an example, I'm told, of a poem that can speak for itself, but lose its faith in its ability to do so by ending with a thesis question. Yeats said a poem should click shut like a well-made box. I don't disagree. I ask, who can see this and not see lynchings, not because I don't trust you, dear reader, or my own abilities. I ask because the imagination would have us believe, much like faith, faith the original candelabra lacks in things unseen. You should know that human limbs burn like branches and branches like human limbs. Only after man began hanging man from trees, then setting him on fire, which would jump from limb to branch like a bastard species of bird, did we come to know such things. 100 years from now, October 9, 2116, 8:18 p.m., when all but the lucky are good and dead, may someone happen upon the question in question. May that lucky someone be Black and so far removed from the verb lynch that she be dumbfounded by its meaning. May she then call up Hirshhorn's candelabra with heads. May her imagination, not her memory, run wild. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nicole.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Quincy. And thank you, Ama. This has been an absolute honor to behold. And thank you so much for your readings and for your conversations. I want to open it up to you all to have a conversation and to ask each other any questions that you might have. Magley from the Rail team is going to repost the prompt in case anyone in the audience has any questions.
I have to say something. Mike Brown Sr. Has joined us on the Zoom, and I would be remiss not to mention his presence being here with us to ruminate on the life and legacy of his son. And I just want to thank him for taking time out to be here. And if he wants to say anything, I'd like to, open the floor. And if he doesn't want to say anything, that's okay too. I want to acknowledge.
No, I just appreciate everyone, still remembering my son, still remembering that day, really understanding why they do the work that they do now, in remembrance of him. We are still doing the work. You can follow us at chosenforchange.org to see all the work that we've been doing for the last 10 years. I have a father's group. It's called Chosen Fathers. I have a mother's group that's called Mothers of an Angel. I have a children's group that's called COPES, Children Overcoming Painful Experiences. I have a Level Up for Literacy at the 24-in-1 schools. So we doing the work out here, I'm definitely leaving my feet in the sand in memories of him because I am him and he is me. So this is how this process goes. So just letting people know, I really appreciate you guys even having this and having a discussion about what happened in St. Louis, in honor of him. Sadly, Mike, I don't know if people knew, Mike was from Pine Line. We both was from Pine Line, Missouri. Mike was just murdered in Ferguson. One of his grandmothers stayed over there. He was over there visiting because, he was going to school the next following week. So I ain't have no problem with it. Go and chill out and have fun. And sadly, these things happen in the process of our children going to the next level of their life. Yeah. So I appreciate you guys. I have another Zoom to get on, but I really appreciate you guys, though.
Thank you so much, Mike Brown Sr. Thank you for being here. Thanks for speaking.
No problem.
I look forward to seeing you in the future. Do any of the other presenters have anything they want to say? I've done a lot of Zooms with the Brooklyn Rail, and this one really hits home. And this one, I think, discusses so many issues that are so relevant to today's the world we're living in today. Law enforcement, murdering people, fascist regimes murdering people. A lot of those people are people of color. And as I do this work, that's something that I carry with me.
I want to thank you so much for bringing everyone together today in this space. And if there are no other questions from everybody, I want to open up the microphones for everyone to say hello and goodbye as you leave today, but not without iterating one last time how grateful everyone at the Rail is for this conversation today. And now I'm going to open up the microphones and everyone can say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you so much for being in this space today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this.
Thanks, thank you so much.
Okay,
Everyone for
everybody.
speaking.
Oh,
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
later.
thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.